Neriglissar smiled. As a matter of fact, I do. Clearing his throat, Neriglissar smiled. I first came across, in the Song of Solomon, chapter 1 verse 5, as he opened the Torah. And it says, I am black but lovely, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains of Solomon. Do not stare at me because I am black, for the sun has burned me. My mother's sons were angry with me, they made me caretaker of the vineyards, but I have not taken care of my own vineyard. So, this is King David and Bathsheba's son. So, when it said my mother's sons were angry with me, I concluded that King David and his ancestors were also black. Smiling, Neriglissar said. You see? He said as he continued. Now turn with me to Jeremiah 8 verse 21. For the hurt of the daughter of my people am I hurt. I am black. Astonishment hath taken hold on me. Neriglissar closed the Torah. Was Jeremiah black as well? I remember reading how the Jews of Arabia were the ones that accompanied the Queen of Sheba and her son back from their visit to Israel. And many of the leaders and inhabitants of Ethiopia became Jewish and seized political domination of ancient Ethiopia, which was called Aksum back then. Many say that this was the religious center that contained the Ark of the Covenant brought from Jerusalem by the offspring of King Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, Menelik I. Also, according to Acts of the Apostles chapter 8, verses 26 through 40, an Ethiopian eunuch, a servant of Queen Candace of Ethiopia, was baptized soon after the resurrection. You see, in early church records history books, Eusebius, a Roman historian, said that this man returned to Ethiopia, where he spread his faith. The king of Aksum soon embraced Christianity and declared it the state religion. So, Ethiopia was the oldest Christian nation in the world. Meaning that Ethiopia was a Christian country long before Ireland and other parts of Europe. Ethiopia was closer to what Christianity was like before it became entangled with notions derived from the imperial ambitions of Rome. And check this out, Neriglissar said. Wanyinyekava replied. Okay, I'm checking. Neriglissar could not stop smiling and laughing as he got excited talking to Wanyinyekavu. Queen Candace was no joke herself. She was Empress of Ethiopia when King Alexander was on his world-conquering rampage. Queen Candace was world-famous as a military tactician and field commander. They say King Alexander could not entertain even the possibility of having his world fame destroyed by risking defeat, especially by a woman. He stopped his armies right at the borders of Ethiopia and did not invade, because he was met there by the waiting black troops with their queen in command. She arranged her armies strategically to meet him, and was present on a war elephant when he approached. Having assessed the strength of her troops, Alexander withdrew from Nubia and headed to Egypt instead. Another story claims that Alexander and Candace had a romantic encounter. The Romans met several queens of Meroe, whom they thought were named Candake. They did not realize that Candake was simply the Meroitic title meaning queen or mother of the crown prince. The Cushites gave special honor to their queens because they believed that the kings, who were sons of these women, were also sons of the great god, Amun. In other words, they imagined that these ladies were wives of the god and mothers of the living gods or the kings. If a king died, his wife might rule alone while her son was growing up. The people would worship her like a goddess. When the Romans went to war against Cush, they reported that the Cushite army was led by a Candace who was a massive, powerful woman, covered with jewels and elaborate robes and blind in one eye. Neriglissar was silent for a moment, as his mind raced. Check this out. Did you know that when Jerusalem and Judea were left desolate, most people were either killed, held in captivity, or were refugees fleeing in different groups to remote lands as far as South Africa? All that remained in Israel was the defiant little garrison atop the mount at Masada, a fortress complex south of the Dead Sea built by Herod the Great. In the end, the entire Jewish nation was scattered throughout the earth. They called this the Second Exile or Edom Exile. Even the Jewish leaders, an elite, were exiled, killed, or sold into slavery. They tried to make a comeback in 132 CE, under Bar Kokhba, rebelling against Hadrian. But 2 years later, Hadrian's army defeated the Jewish armies, and Jewish independence was lost. As their punishment, Hadrian changed the name of Jerusalem to Aelia Capitolina, turned it into a pagan city, and banned the Jews from living there. Hadrian renamed Judea and Samaria to Syria Palestina. "Check this out," Neriglissar said. Waninyekova reply. "I'm still checking," Neriglissar said. "I'm trying to make a connection here." Waninyekova reply. "Go ahead, I'm listening." Neriglissar rubbed his beard, thinking. "There were many, and I mean many, great African nations, but there are at least 10 African kingdoms many don't know about. Well, I didn't know about. One was the Bornu," pointing to the word, Waninyekova said. "Bornu Empire," Neriglissar said. "Okay, the Bornu Empire grew into the Kanem Empire in northeastern Nigeria. At its height, it covered not only much of Chad, but also parts of southern Libya and eastern Niger, northeastern Nigeria, and northern Cameroon. By the late 11th century, this same kingdom became known as the Islamic Saifa." Pointing to the word, Waninyekova said. "Saifawa or Saifawa dynasty," Neriglissar said. "Saifawa or Saifawa dynasty, which was founded by Humai or Hammei ibn Salamna. The Saifawa dynasty ruled for 771 years, making it one of the longest-lasting dynasties in human history. Then there was the Saw civilization, which flourished in Middle Africa, and the Saw lived by the Shari River south of Lake Chad and territory that later became part of Cameroon and Chad. Saw were skilled workers in bronze, copper, and iron. Then there was the Shilluk Kingdom, the Bagirmi Kingdom, and the Wadai Empire, the Kingdom of Luba or the Luba Empire. In the Kingdom of Lunda and the Ajuran Empire, many of these tribes throughout Africa claimed Jewish ancestry. They observed Semitic traditions such as kosher-like dietary restrictions and slaughter practices, male circumcision, and strict rules against intermarriage. Many Semitic-sounding clan names were in Ghana, Nigeria, Mali, Uganda, Cameroon, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and even Sao Tome and other countries, as well.